We are live. I'm going to go live with someone I'm a fan of on Instagram, an amazing news creator by the name of Moshe. He's going to come up here in a minute. We are a few minutes late, and that is my fault. I had a little bit of a family emergency. Is going to sound worse than it is. A little bit of family drama. I got 3 boys, so every once in a while there's drama. So I apologize for being late. But in general, we're excited about creators here at Instagram, how people who are using our platform to make a living in all sorts of creative and new and inspiring ways. And Moshe has been one of the most interesting new creators that I've seen doing work in the news. Fun to bring him on. He's going to show up here in a second. I'll probably ask him some questions, but I think he's probably got more questions for me. Hey, there he is.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Doing very well. I understand I missed you here on the East Coast briefly. I'm here in New York.
I know. I was in New York for 48 hours. I did a podcast. I did the Breakfast Club, and then I had to take care of a couple other work things, and then I'm back now with the fam.
I
But it was nice to be in New York.
I thought you managed yourself very well on Breakfast Club. I've enjoyed the clip so far.
I appreciate it. I've watched almost all of it. I've got another 25 minutes to finish later. But I love the 3 of them. They're amazing. I've
Yeah.
spent some time with Charlamagne before, but I hadn't spent some time with DJ Envy DJ Envy or Angela. So it was fun to hang out with them.
I like they ask the questions that on the top of many people's minds who spend minutes, hours every day
Yeah,
on your platform.
absolutely, absolutely. How are you doing? How are you finding things right now?
Really, I'm enjoying it. I'm actually now. I was just looking back. So I've officially been on Instagram since like the early days, which is why I was able to get my handle, right, my first name. So like 2011 or whatever. And
It's
I look back.
impressive.
I looked back recently. My first photo, as many were, was like a photo of a taxi cab driving by me in New York City with like a cool filter or whatever. And so for many years, that was my experience on the platform. And then March of last year, so it's been almost about 16 months now, as COVID began, I started to utilize the platform differently to curate news and do headlines. And it's been really an incredible and interesting experience, especially given that I spent a lot of my career in network news, broadcasting to millions, and the experience on Instagram has been a lot more intimate in terms of being able to exchange ideas and really learn from folks as you report things out.
Yeah, I bet. It's been exciting. It's also been fun to watch you sort of evolve how you use it. I know you're supposed to ask me questions, but I'm going to start by asking you a question.
Uh,
What's working for you and what's not working for you on Instagram right now?
well, let's start with good news, right? Good news, bad news. Good news, what's working for me? I love the constant feedback that you get, the community that that I've been a part of and helped to be able to build. And this is folks from all over the world. And it began during the kind of early COVID days where people were talking about lockdown and their experiences. And initially, where I really saw the impact was like people who worked in hospitals and nurses, and they were messaging me like, I have a PPE shortage of X hospital, and then I would post it, and then immediately someone's like, oh, I have a contact that can get them masks, and you're like, wow, like look at what we can do, and look at the impact you can have, and so that was really incredible, and so that's continued, I think, throughout, which is even like when there were some headlines around student loan deferment. And I threw out a question at folks, like, what's your student loan situation, your debt situation? And like immediately, like, first of all, you find out, God bless the dentists in America who've taken out several $100,000 of loans. I had no idea. And this is somebody, like, I've worked in national news for a long time, but the things you learn from folks and the types of things they're experiencing. So love that. I appreciate you guys rolling out badges and the ability to kind of monetize as a creator. That's been great. If you could help me and others lobby Apple and Google to stop taking a significant cut of said badges, well,
It's a big
I'll
cut. It's pretty tough.
it's a significant cut. It's almost a third. And so, though I understand there's legal issues and stuff related to that, so I think anything that you can, and I've given feedback to folks before, help creators find a way to make a living on the platform that aren't necessarily in the lifestyle space, where I feel like in the lifestyle space there's a lot of natural brand sponsorships and things you can do there. For those of us like in the news and information space, it's kind of a wild west right now in terms of like how do you monetize in a way where you remain ethical as a journalist, and you kind of stay core to your brand. So I think progress there is good. I think that then I pivot to things where there I think we do need more help, which I think is still in the monetization space. Like I use the folks over at Patreon as like a subscriber thing for kind of tiered members.
Yeah.
So anything you guys can do, and I was curious whether you're working on creating kind of tiered levels within Instagram so you can kind of live within the Instagram orbit ecosystem, but have kind of tiered content for subscribers or, kind of that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that, but first I'm going to have to talk to this sort of free boozy movement that's going on in the comments here.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of people saying give Boozy's account back. Real quick, we've got rules about what can and cannot be on Instagram. Those rules are all around safety. So we don't allow hate speech, we don't allow violence, we don't allow nudity for safety reasons, not because we have a religious opinion about nudity, but because we can't verify age and we can't verify consent. If you have something taken down, it doesn't mean you automatically get suspended, but if you have enough strikes, and particularly enough rough strikes, eventually you do get suspended, and there are no exceptions or or sort of special favors here. We do sometimes make mistakes. I'll have the team double check and make sure that we have made no mistakes with Boozy's account, but assuming we haven't, which I assume we haven't, I think there's nothing we can do. So I appreciate you all letting me know that you want to make sure that we double check this. The team is literally looking into it right now. I want to make sure we haven't made a mistake. But in the end, we got to hold the line. We've got rules. Those rules are clear. We even warn you when you've taken a few things done that you might get suspended. And it might be that there's nothing that I can do for Boozy, but we will find out. On creators more broadly, because we don't want to be suspending creators from Instagram. We don't want to be taking content down from creators on Instagram. We want creators to be able to express themselves and to make a living. There's a range of things we're doing. You're asking about subs, our subscriptions, which I think are really exciting and interesting, particularly because I think they create more predictable income. One of the hard things about a lot of the ways you can make money online, whether it's through branded content deals or rev shares, is the revenue can be a little volatile. And so that makes it more difficult to make it a profession as opposed to a hobby. And so I love the idea of subscriptions and allowing people to, let's say, share content exclusively with people who are willing to pay you, I don't know, $5 a month, and doing that all within Instagram. But furthermore, I'd like us to figure out a way to do that supports other apps too, not just the Facebook app and the rest of the Facebook company's family of apps. But imagine if you could bring that subscription across to other apps out there. So I don't know if that's possible. We're going to talk to all of the other major players in the space that we can and try to figure this out. We're currently exploring a couple of different directions, so nothing to announce today. But I do think that subscriptions are going to be one of the more important things for us to figure out over the next 6 to 18 months on Instagram. There's a lot of other things we can do for creators too. There's more that we can do in commerce. So whether it's branded content and matchmaking, helping creators vet brands find the right creators, affiliate marketing, which is essentially kickbacks for promoting products and having those transactions happening, or even merchandise. But I think I'm most excited about are these user pay, for lack of a better phrase, type products. So whether you can paying for badges or tipping or subscriptions, ways to allow fans. So if I'm just a fan of what you do, for me to compensate you directly for it and for us to facilitate that. So I'm excited about the opportunity, but we'll see where we end up.
Cool. And the other thing, I live my life in stories. And I think I mentioned these before. But the ability, I was curious about the rationale behind not being able to mass share stories, Instagram stories, and because I know that you guys very carefully consider the various buttons you add and features that you add.
Yeah, so a couple different things in that space. So this is currently an experiment where we're trying to focus the reshare flow, which is what we call when you share something from feed, on messaging and less on stories. Lots of people want to share feed posts to stories. Less people are interested in seeing everyone's feed posts in stories. There's sort of a tension between what people want to share and what people want to see in stories right now. So we're wrestling with that. And stories was designed to be the place to share, everyday moments, to share your day as you go along, sort of, blogging your life, for lack of a better expression. And so we're a little bit worried that it's sort of gotten away from us on that. So We're not going to remove the ability to reshare feed posts to stories. We're exploring a couple different ways to
Hmm.
focus that flow more in messaging, but to still allow it. But I don't know where we'll end up. It's a delicate thing. People feel really strongly about this one way or the other, and so we're gonna try and be careful as we figure out a way forward.
Yeah, we've had. I think people have hacked it so far where they've taken screenshots of stories and then resharing them and tagging and whatnot. It speaks to a larger question I had for you, which is, you talk about kind of the evolution of IG, right? It started with just the pictures, and then you added in videos, and now you got creators, messaging, shopping. And so I wonder, as you guys make these decisions, as you kind of look at the future, are you looking a couple years out, 5 years out, and do you see it more as like an entertainment platform like YouTube? Is it more of a marketplace like Amazon? Is it a little bit like everything? What's next? How do you describe Instagram and the direction it's taking?
I think over the long run, our opportunity is to be the best place to discover things that to talk about with your friends. I think we're sort of at the intersection of interests and public content and friends and connections. I don't think we're going to ever be a pure entertainment or video platform the way YouTube is, and we're not going to ever be able to really compete with a pure messaging product like WhatsApp or iMessage at just pure friend connections and the instantaneous nature of that type of connection. Where I think we can do some really interesting things is discovering things to talk about with your friends. But that's for the average person using Instagram. But the flip side of that is what we call creators, or who we call creators, people whose personality is their brand and who make a living online. I want us to be the de facto platform for creators on the internet. I want us to be the best home, whether it is you're trying to tell your story or reach an audience or understand your audience or make a living or protect yourself. And I think that we have a lot of great and amazing creators on the platform today, but I think there's a lot more that we can do on their behalf. Um, Now, there's other things happening. We're going to need to lean into these big shifts, the growth of video, the growth of messaging, the shift in power from organizations and institutions to individuals. But that's sort of how see it all coming together, is focusing on discovering things to talk about with your friends and with a focus on creator content.
So one thing, obviously, because it's very close to what I'm doing, is news and information on the platform. And I know that you had a previous life over at Facebook developing the news feed, et cetera. And, one of the, I started to get started on news here last March during COVID, and then kind of it evolved as the social justice BLM stuff started happening, and, the election, and then most recently probably the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in May, et cetera. How do you see the platform, and what lessons have you learned from your experience over at Facebook, and how are you kind of imagining or seeing now people using Instagram for news and information?
Yeah, the honest answer is news on Instagram makes me nervous. I think that getting involved in the news industry is something you need to be very careful about doing. Um, my experience at Facebook was that we ended up under an immense amount of scrutiny and with really high expectations, and that was difficult for us to manage. I think a lot of that was on us. I think we overpromised and underdelivered in a series of ways and areas, and I think that's problematic. And I think we really paid the price there. I think having distribution be volatile, so the amount of people you reach go up and down, is not acceptable if you're running a business on a platform. And if we were encouraging you to run your business on our platform, and then we made changes that move your reach around wildly, we should expect to get a lot of blowback. So with news on Instagram, I just want us to proceed very carefully. I don't think we're going to try and encourage it, quite frankly. I don't think we're going to try and build any news specific products, and we're not going to go out and try to do some news specific deals. But I do expect that as we make more broad products that are working for creators and for helping people discover what they're interested in, you're going to see news continue to grow on Instagram, and I think that's okay. I just don't want to accelerate it more than it's going to grow naturally or organically.
Got it.
Um,
So I should be very cautious about my follower growth,
well,
given your
that's what you're
comments.
probably right. Don't get too excited about any new specific features coming your
Got it.
way. But the good news for someone like you is, a lot of what we're trying to build for creators broadly, I think are going to be applicable. Like,
Yeah.
I think subscriptions is a very established business model for news, and I actually think a lot of other businesses are now borrowing from that model. And so we are interested in building subscriptions not because we are hearing a bunch of requests from news creators about subscriptions, but because we're hearing a lot of requests from everyone about subscriptions. And so I think you're going to benefit, from the rising tide rises all boats or raises all boats or whatever that expression is.
Yeah, yeah. I look forward to the tide. The tide is going up.
Tide's up.
Tide's up, everybody. So I asked my community for a whole bunch of questions, and the most popular question was how is Instagram confronting hate speech, in particular anti-Semitism and hate speech writ large? And would love to hear about kind of how you guys have been approaching it, what you've learned so far, what you're doing, what you've done well, what you regret, and you're kind of tweaking when it comes to how you effectively police a platform of a billion users these days.
Yeah, it's over 1 billion now, which is a wild number to think about. Hate speech is important and it's tricky. There are bigots, there are racists out there in the world, there are hateful people out there in the world. They're not going to check all of that baggage at the door when they open up Instagram, and so it's going to inevitably come to the platform. We try to organize the work into two buckets, so preventing it from happening in the first place. So whether it is identifying it with technology and taking it down, or nudging people before they comment to, be reconsider what they're writing or whatever it might be. But then we have to also embrace and accept that some is inevitably going to come up to the platform. And so we're trying to also be creative and build tools that allow people to protect themselves when they are the victims of harassment and hate. And it's not that we want victims to have to carry the load here. It's just that we think that this is too big a problem to not have a multi-pronged solution. On the technology side, which is where we tend to lean on things like classifiers, so being able to identify hate speech with an algorithm that predicts that it might be hate speech and then has someone review it, which is how most of our safety systems work. One of the tricky things has been that to identify hate speech often requires a lot of nuanced context. What one word or emoji or phrase might be totally benign coming from someone and be completely problematic coming from someone else. That makes it more difficult to classify than nudity, for instance, or violence. We've gotten a lot better. Actually, every 3 months, we release this community standards report where you can see how much we've actioned and how much of it has been proactive versus reactive for Facebook and Instagram and for more and more problem types, including hate speech over time. So you can see us in public getting better at this. But there's a lot of work to do, and it'll never end because how people misbehave or how people spread hate is going to change as the world changes. And so our safety measures are going to have to change along with them. But it's one that we deeply care about.
I'd love to get a sense, to the extent that you can kind of reveal behind the scenes, like, do you have people kind of working in the algorithm and like tweaking it according to like key catchphrases, etc.? How many human beings, and where are they? Like, is there just one large warehouse somewhere and they're all on a computer, and like, and when I put in a request for Boosie or whatever, like a human is managing that? How does that all work?
Yeah, so a couple different things. For a classifier, so trying to build a piece of technology that's going to identify how likely an image is to be hate speech, there are a bunch of different steps. The first is to build what we would call a data set. So a bunch of examples. So it could be tens of thousands of examples of things that are manually labeled by people as hate speech or not hate speech. And those labelers will be all over the world for a whole bunch of reasons. Then we write code that tries to learn patterns. So based on that set of examples, they will start to pick up on certain types of words or imagery that tends to be hate or not to be hate. Then what it'll do is, that's called an algorithm or a classifier. And so once you build it, it will predict how likely something and anything is to be hate speech. It comes out with a number, a likelihood from, usually from 0 to 1. Then we label it again, because then what we need to do to understand how good the classifier is, we need people to look at the results and say, you were right, you were wrong, you missed this one, this one was a false, what we call a false positive, so you thought it was hate speech and it's not, so that we can understand how effective and accurate the classifiers are. Then when you get all of that to a good place, then you start to run it out in the wild and you flag things for people to review. So the class, for most problem types, the classifiers will say, this is probably nudity, this is probably hate speech, and then an actual person will go and confirm, yes, this is nudity, yes, this is hate speech, no, 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 and then take down content accordingly. So it's a very, it's both people and technology mixed together. People wait, I say this all the time, they way too often position technology and people in opposition, right? And the truth is, people are great at nuance and terrible at scale. And technology is great at scale and terrible at nuance. So any meaningfully successful solution to a content moderation problem is going to require both. And we need to embrace that.
One follow to all that is, and I know that like you have this challenge, but like in the COVID era, riding the line between free speech and actual disinformation, when it comes to the vaccines and various folks with opinions and misstatements and truthful statements, etc. What have you learned specifically kind of in the COVID era on how to manage that, and what have you taught the algorithm on how to flag stuff and not flag stuff?
Misinformation is tough. Misinformation we use to describe essentially fake news. Disinformation is intentional misinformation, trying to mislead. We don't try to differentiate broadly between the two because it's hard to decipher intent, but they're both important problems. Historically, we've taken a lot of flack for letting a lot of people say a bunch of crap that we don't agree with on our platform because we want to allow people's ability, or we want to allow people to really express themselves. It's sort of what makes the whole system work, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or any other social media platform. Mm-hmm. Where we step in is where we see safety issues. And so we try and define clear policies that prevent people from getting harmed in some way, shape, or form. So for misinformation, historically, we let it stay up, but we rely on third-party fact checkers to debunk it, and then we try to make sure it gets less distribution, that less people see it in the platform. Where we've changed our policies is around misinformation related to COVID-19 and misinformation related to vaccines, because there's a very real-world risk of harm associated with that. So we actually take that content off our platform entirely. We again rely on a combination of people, in this case, third-party fact checkers and technology. We are better equipped to do this than we would have been if this pandemic hit 4 or 5 years ago, before we gotten much more deep into misinformation broadly. So that is a silver lining. I think we were years late to really embrace our responsibility to address safety concerns. We had been working on safety, but not at the level that we should have until really all the scrutiny that came in the wake of the 2016 presidential election here in the US. Now, that's not to say that we're doing everything right with misinformation right now on Instagram and on Facebook. I'm sure some is slipping through. I'm sure sometimes we catch stuff that we shouldn't. But by and large, I'm actually proud of our response to the pandemic. I think we've done a lot to get people access to good information, to encourage people to wear masks, to stay home, to get vaccinated, to get them information about how to get vaccinated. We've done a lot for small businesses to help them try and stay afloat during trying times, with tools to help them reach customers. We built a bunch of commerce-specific tools that we never would have shipped out here if it wasn't for the pandemic. We shifted hundreds of people. But the pandemic's not over, and so right. The challenges aren't over. So, and I don't pretend to know what the rest of 2021 is going to look like. I think we could probably agree that it's pretty up in the air right now, and so we need to continue to try and look around corners and figure out what more that we can do, and what our part might be.
Cool. I want to get a couple other subjects. One was Norway's new law. So they are making the effort, I think they've almost passed it at this point, requiring influencers and advertisers to label retouched photos in a bid to kind of deal with unrealistic beauty standards. Was wondering, given some of the criticism Instagram faces about the impact of the filters on body image, mental health, plastic surgery, etc., how you view that Norway law, and is that something that Instagram would ever consider doing unilaterally?
It's a tough one because on one hand, I love transparency. I think I'm pushing really hard at Instagram and at Facebook more broadly for us to do more to make sure you know why you're seeing what you're seeing and what it is. And so I love the idea of knowing that something was, retouched or not. On the other hand, this isn't a popular thing to say, but it is super important that whatever policies you put in place, either as a government or as a platform, that they are operate like that it's possible to operationalize them at a high level of rigor. Like the perfect policy around nudity or hate speech or violence is very nuanced, but we can't pick the perfect policy because we can't implement the perfect policy consistently and accurately. And so I have a similar concern about a law that I have no idea how you would enforce. So you run the risk of undermining the credibility of the law and law more broadly if so I don't know. It's not something that I imagine us doing. It's something that I have a philosophical um, disagreement with. I think my main concerns about it are practically how would you begin to enforce something like that.
Right.
Um, in general, for issues, I think that it's well intentioned. If we're trying to address social comparison and anxiety in a world where more and more of us are connected to more and more people, not only on social media but more broadly, I think that's a noble thing. That's something that we try to work on here too. I think there's probably other things to do. I think education is probably important. Um, Getting parents more resources to have meaningful conversations with their kids at a younger age is probably really important. Um, Privacy tools are probably really important. So you've got more control and defaults. So you've got more control about who you share with and who can see and why. We actually just announced some major changes today, defaulting 16-year-old under 16-year-olds to private accounts on Instagram, which is a big deal. But I'm glad they're playing in the space. I think it's a good space to play in.
Yeah, I was going to, in terms of kind of when you, on your agenda right now, what are the biggest challenges you think the platform faces? Is it the body image stuff? Is it the hate speech? Is it like when you look ahead and you're like, okay, here are the three things Instagram most needs to focus on right now. What are they? What are the things that like you know are really important to the future of the platform?
Okay, I only get to pick three things.
10 things,
10
20 things.
things.
We only have a few minutes, so
Yeah, I have 72 things, Moshe, and I want to walk through every single one in order.
I can't wait for the PowerPoint. Go ahead.
Exactly. A number of things come to mind. I think the biggest risk for any platform of our scale is that the world changes around you and you become irrelevant because you don't adapt to it. I think that is a very real risk for us. I mean, there are a lot of things that were very culturally relevant and then lost their moment. Vine, Friendster, MySpace. When I joined Facebook, we were smaller than MySpace, and the big thing we wanted to do was catch up with MySpace. They were sort of the big bad wolf, so to speak. I think competition is really fierce right now. For Instagram specifically, YouTube is a behemoth. TikTok has exploded, but Snapchat had an amazing quarter just now, and iMessage continues to dominate teen and friend connections here and in the UK. Well, that's in the UK, but in Canada and Australia. I think that, but yeah, I do think safety and integrity concerns are another big one. Um, if we look at the research and what people say they want us to focus on, they'd say mostly things that you might expect based on the press coverage over the last couple of years. So they say things like misinformation, elections integrity, what we internally call coordinated inauthentic behavior. So when you see essentially these propaganda farms or machines trying to influence people. Um, but for Instagram, for me, it's anything that disproportionately affects young people. If we're going to continue to focus on young people and creators as those two most important demographics, then we have the responsibility to focus on problems that disproportionately affect young people. So for me, that's things like, yes, social comparison, but also bullying, and uh, I don't know, I don't want to list a bunch of negative things, but any problem that really disproportionately affects young people. Beyond that, the last category, I'd say I'll do four instead of three. If it goes the world changing, competition, safety and integrity is the risks, not the order in which we should focus on them, but the biggest risks. I think, the scrutiny and regulation is another huge one. The amount of regulatory compliance issues we deal with is just astounding, and it's just growing exponentially. I think fundamentally it's a good thing for us to be under scrutiny. I think regulation makes sense for social media more broadly, but I think there's good regulation and there's bad regulation. And regulation can have all sorts of really unintended consequences. And I do think it's going to become an increasingly challenging thing for us to navigate.
Since you mentioned them, I'll ask you. I'll put you on the spot. What do you think TikTok does well? What are you jealous of over at TikTok, which has
Ooh,
seen incredible growth?
the two things that I think they do amazingly well are one, they are really entertaining. You can really reliably know that you're going to be delighted when you open up TikTok, which is one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of it. The other is they are much better than us, and that pretty much anyone else at breaking new talent. So in ranking systems and in algorithms, there's
That's a question I got, by the way. How do you? Somebody asked me, like, how will you guys be more like TikTok and help good content take off regardless of size?
exactly, yeah. So
Yeah.
a number of different things. We need to lean into what's called exploration-based ranking. So it's easier to find something that you'll probably be interested in that's super popular. It's harder to find something that's going to delight you that very few people know about yet. But there are ways to try and do that. You can essentially reserve a small percentage of what people see in the Reels tab and show it to smaller accounts and see what does best, and then show the ones that do best against each other and show them more, and essentially run like a little mini competition inside of the Reels tab to try and give tiny accounts an opportunity to totally break free. Um, there are different, you can lean into on the technical side, sparser features and data points. There's a bunch of things you can do there too. But you have to design the system with that intent. And historically, we haven't done that. As Alex, the founder of Bitly, Musically used to say, you know, uh, Instagram has historically been like Europe, where the social classes are established, and musically, which is not TikTok because they got bought, is like America. Like we want to be more like America in this analogy, and so we're working towards that. But they were remarkably good at that, and they saw that early, and for that they deserve a lot of credit.
Yeah, you mentioned Reels. Like, I know that you're playing with length of Reels right now. Like, are we going to see like full length shows that we can watch on? Like, how does the Reels IGTV video world evolve as far as you're concerned on Instagram?
So we need to clean it up. It's a little bit too complicated right now. Today we announced we're moving to 60-second reels, which I think will help. I do think a 5 minute reel isn't a reel. A reel is a short form entertaining video. It's not a TV show. And everyone, it's kind of interesting because we we started with short form video, but then we started working on IGTV, which was long form, and we started to try to work our way down. TikTok has started at 15 seconds, and now they went to 30 seconds, 60, and now 3 minutes. So they're trying to work their way up. YouTube started super long, and now they're trying to go down to short. So everyone's just sort of coming at each other from different angles right now. So it's kind of nuts. Um, but for us, I want video just to be video on Instagram. I don't want you to have to worry about what it is. But I do think that the one exception is going to, long term, is going to be Reels, which are going to be short form entertaining content. And we should embrace video more broadly and feed and explore in addition to in the Reels tab. But to have a tab where you can reliably go and be entertained, I think is going to be important to our future. And Reels is at a much different place in different countries. Where TikTok is banned, like in India, it has exploded. But it's done really well in other countries too, like Brazil. Where we have a lot more room to improve is right now, and where I'm mostly focused is the US. But it's been an exciting time for us.
I know I just have just a couple more minutes and we got to wrap it up.
We're good.
Quick question, quick speed round. How many hours a day, hours I assume, do you spend on Instagram?
Oh, I should just look on like I have two phones, so it's kind of hard. I got to add up my Android and iOS time, but probably an hour or two.
Yeah,
Probably closer to an hour.
got it.
What
What
about
would
you?
more than that? Actually, if you could allow for more creation on desktop, uh,
We're working on
uh,
it. We're working
yeah,
on it.
exactly. That would help me spend probably less time and type quicker. Um,
That's fair.
free Britney question for you. Britney Spears' Instagram account gets a lot of scrutiny. Do you know who controls it?
Ooh, I should. I do not, but I'm sure Charles and our partnerships team do. So I can look that up and get back to you.
Okay, yeah, because yeah, I just was wondering because obviously things get posted, things don't get posted. Is it her family? Is it her whatever?
I think it's like a combination, if I remember correctly, but I should double check that.
Got it. Um, and then yeah, I mean, I ultimately practical question, very briefly. A lot of folks, what are tricks to boosting my account? What are tricks to growing my following? I got that from a lot of folks.
Yeah.
What do you tell them?
I tell them a couple different things. One, be clear about what you want out of Instagram when you go into it. Is it your business? Is it a way to raise awareness about your business, which is elsewhere? Is it a hobby? Is it, about art? Because depending on what it is, I think you're going to use Instagram differently. Experiment, because every audience is different. What's going to be best for your audience is not going to be what's best for my audience, and vice versa. So you always have to also people's interests change. So constantly try new things and try to figure out what works. Give people a sense of what they're going to get. So like, I like having, series, regular routine. So I do my weekly Ask Me Anythings. I do my weekly This Week on Instagram so that I think people can get a sense for what they're going to get before they get it. And then the other ones are things like lean into video and engage with your community as much as possible. But no silver bullets, unfortunately.
A lot of hard work, a lot of time.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm trying to figure it out myself, by the way. Just to be clear, I'm trying
You
to
you
build
you
up my.
seem to be doing okay there, Adam.
I don't know. I'm still. I
We
mean, I'm still working. I want, and
we
my
got to
my
get you to a
comms team is,
million.
yeah, my comms team is embarrassed about my follower count, but I think I just want people I just want to grow a following that's actually interested in what I have to say. I don't know if I have that. I think you have a lot of people who are mad about. Well, in this case, you can see today people are mad about Boozy, but they're mad about a specific account or they want to get a blue check mark or whatever it is, and so
It's
um,
about
it's
it's
hard
about
for me to tell.
quality, about equality, not quantity, as far as
It
we're
really,
concerned.
I mean, we joke, but truthfully, your engagement matters more than your follower count. People spend way too much time focusing on your follower counts. If I'm a brand or if I'm trying to work with you as another creator, I should care way more about how many people actually show up to your lives, how many people actually like and comment on your posts than what your follower count is. The follower count is just it's just clout. It's not actually the best measure of your relevance.
Cool. I know we come up against a wall here, but I'd love to continue this conversation at some point as you
Yeah,
guys roll out new things.
yeah, it would be great. It would be great.
Yeah.
I think you're doing great work. It's fun watching you. I hear your voice at least once a week because you're, I think, my wife Monica's primary source of news at this point. And so I'm always like, is that
So
Moshe? Is
it's
that
a lot of
Moshe?
pressure. It's a
Yeah.
it's a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure. Sorry, I disturb your Monday night
No, it's
every
okay.
week.
She's a fan. She's a fan. So I hear
Awesome.
you. Sometimes you're the last thing I hear before I go to sleep. It's Moshe.
Well, I'll try to end with positive things every week.
Uh, all right, I appreciate that.
For
I
you.
appreciate that.
No problem. Thanks, Adam. This has been a pleasure.
Take care of yourself. Good to see
All
you.
right. Later.
Peace.